air was stiff, with the smell of dirt, urine, and blood. Twilight wrinkled her nose in disgust. The guards in front of her walked silently, doing their job very well. The only light were some torches that made the armor of the guards glisten like gold. Come to think of it, Celestia may have said that they were made of gold in one of their many conversations. Not very effective in battle, considering gold is too soft to handle a steel blade. The sound of hooves clanking on the stone floor were drowned out by shrieks, groans, and moans of the insane. Twilight shivered, but not from the cold, but from the fear of what was facing her through a particular door. She had been here before, leaving always with a heart full of more guilt and shame than when she had arrived. The asylum keeper who was leading her suddenly stopped in front of the dreaded door.
Here we are, Princess Twilight.
Thank you. Please wait here. And no matter what happens, do not enter.
The guards looked at each other in uncertain confusion, but did not dare question the orders of a princess. She took a deep breath and walked in, shutting the door behind her. Before her was a wall of see-through magic-infused glass, designed to repel unicorn magic. Behind the wall was a monster, staring into Twilight's very existence. The creature had a straggly, unkempt coat of what was once a buttercream color. Her rat's nest of a mane and tail were a dark pink color. Her once soft feathered wings were now scaly bat wings, and her cutie mark had been changed from 3 innocent pink butterflies to 3 fierce pink bats. Her ears were like a bat's, and her blood-red eyes glared with the sight of a fierce animal, straight into Twilight's soul. Her fangs were currently in the body of an otter, sucking the poor thing's life until it was sucked dry. Twilight sighed as she looked at this monster, this creature. She was once a sweet, shy Pegasus. She was once a beloved friend, whom she had murdered in one of her magic experiments. Yes, murdered. There was no sugarcoating the truth. Discord had told her so, just before almost killing her. It was not an act of mercy. Twilight had survived only because Discord was not thinking straight, and she was able to stop him. She felt bad for Discord, and wondered if he could still dream of the good days, while in an eternal sleep. Flutterbat finished her gruesome meal and looked at her.
Hello, Fluttershy.
Flutterbat snarled at her and lunged at the glass, trying to attack her. Flutterbat rubbed her head after the impact and glared at Twilight in angry hunger. She sighed as she remembered what had all led to this.
Who in the world would be knocking now?
Twilight thought as she sat up and proceeded to opening her front door, unaware of who or what she may be greeted with. Twilight gasped, surprised to see Fluttershy, drenched from the rain. Her eyes were full of fear, with teardrops visible in the midst of the dark doorway. Fluttershy was quiet, and just continued to stare blankly. Twilight could tell something was wrong.
Fluttershy, what are you doing out here in the rain? What happened?
Fluttershy remained silent, as a crack of lightning erupted in the mix of the violent rainstorm. Twilight just looked at Fluttershy with confusion and worry.
Can I come in, Twilight? I need to... Something happened. Something bad.
Twilight did not even hesitate, but wondered what happened so bad that she had decided to show up in the dead of night. At this point, she didn't care, only wanted to help Fluttershy with whatever had happened.
Of course. Come in. What happened?
Fluttershy gulped as she walked in, taking a seat next to Twilight, who had provided a chair.
I'll get you a towel. You're soaked.
That's not necessary. I'm fine. Twilight, I just need to talk to you. It's important.
You could get hypothermia. What could be more important than possibly dying?
This.
Fluttershy slowly unfolded one of her wings, revealing an omen that caused Twilight to nearly collapse from the sudden impact of realization. In the mild grasp of Fluttershy's wing was a dried-up apple with 2 bite marks punctured in it. Twilight was speechless.
What? But how? Is that even possible? I cured you. This just can't be possible.
Fluttershy did not respond, seeing there was nothing she could say. The 2 bite marks were clear enough, and there was no denying that somehow, some way, Flutterbat was still very much alive within Fluttershy.
Please, Twilight, promise you can tell any pony about this. Please.
Twilight was still recovering from the shock of the sudden realization that she was now fully aware of. She had no idea how this could even be a possibility, but that did not matter now. Fluttershy was in a state of panic, so Twilight proceeded to calming down her friend.
Calm down, Fluttershy. The last thing we need is you going back into any sort of panic attack.
How can I stay calm when I could possibly turn into that monster inside of me at any moment? And possibly hurt you or any pony.
Twilight stood in shock, having never heard Fluttershy so angry. She had to get the situation under control, otherwise it might draw unwanted attention. Twilight approached Fluttershy with caution, placing her hoof on one of Fluttershy's. Fluttershy jolted her head upward, drenched with tears, mucus, and saliva from crying.
How long?
Last night. Oh, Twilight, I'm scared.
Fluttershy wiped some tears from her eyes as Twilight proceeded to placing a hoof on Fluttershy's back, rubbing it gently.
I don't know how this happened, Fluttershy, but don't worry. We'll cure this.
Fluttershy smiled, then gave Twilight a hug, feeling her tears drip from her face onto Twilight's back.
Thank you. Twilight, I'm scared. I don't want to hurt you or anybody else.
Twilight only responded with a smile, then freed herself from Fluttershy's hug.
I'll need to do some tests on you. No pony, not even Spike or Starlight, is allowed in the lab without my permission, so you should be safe there.
Fluttershy shuddered a little from the mentioning of the tests, but at the same time, she knew that Twilight knew what she was doing.
I trust you. Twilight, I'll do whatever it takes for you to find a cure.
Oh, what a fool I've been. I promised to not tell any pony. If I had, that day would have never happened, and would not have affected my judgment, which carried a hefty price. Your condition is improving a little, Fluttershy. I feel like I'm very close to finding the missing piece of the puzzle.
That's great news, Twilight.
That goes to say, until I figure out a cure, an apple a night and keeping yourself locked in your room for the night should be enough to subside your appetite.
And so it went on for months. Tests, tests, and more tests. Fluttershy came every morning and left every afternoon with an apple tucked under her wing. Twilight worked when it was convenient for her, for she didn't think that Flutterbat was of any consequence. She remembered the day perfectly where the fact that there was a problem was staring her right in the face. Unfortunately, she did not realize it.
Right on time, I see. You've been getting pretty consistent at your schedule, Fluttershy. Should we get started?
Fluttershy was quiet at first, even more quiet than usual. At a second glance, Twilight noticed that Fluttershy was shifting her way from one hoof to the next. Twilight decided to question Fluttershy why she was acting more different than usual.
Is something wrong, Fluttershy?
I don't want to do the tests anymore, Twilight.
Fluttershy was very blunt, normally not how she'd reply to anything. Twilight immediately proceeded to questioning her on why she wanted to stop doing the tests.
Why? The tests are helping you, Fluttershy. I'm afraid that discontinuing the test could lead to more harm than good. Sure, you've improved, but that doesn't mean you're cured.
I haven't had major yellowies for months. My appetite for apples has lowered, and even though I still feel a slight temptation, I could always go back to eating one apple each night, and keep myself locked up during the spells. Why should we continue the test if they're not improving any more than what they were 2 months ago? I really do want to stop the test, Twilight.
I suppose you are right, but still... I really think we should keep doing tests for just a little longer, just to be safe.
Twilight, you know as much as I do. The tests haven't improved for a long while, and if you're so worried about it, I'm sure we could get some professional help. What about Celestia? I'm sure she could help if it's necessary.
No.
Twilight's objection made Fluttershy jump, seeing she had not even hesitated at the mentioning of Celestia. Fluttershy wondered what had Twilight so on edge about going to Celestia for possible help. She was a much more wiser and experienced princess, so surely Celestia could do more for her if it was necessary.
Sorry. I just might be banished for doing this amount of magic on you and the bats. Or locked up. Or locked up in the place I would be banished to.
Twilight, I think you're overreacting. As long as Celestia knew the reasons for doing the test, I'm sure she'd understand.
You might be right. But at the same time, I don't want to risk it. Idiot! That was what I was. An idiot. A selfish, pompous, arrogant idiot. If I had talked to Celestia, all might have been okay. But no, I was too worried about my precious title and crown.
Out of her thoughts, in the midst of the asylum, a whisper caressed Twilight's eardrum. Twilight lifted her eyes and almost screamed in fright. Inches from her was a transparent figure of Snips, the first victim. He was a pale blue color with 2 red drips of blood trailing down his neck. His eyes were glazed over, an almost blind look about them. His mouth was dribbling blood as well. One of his legs was missing, and was eaten to the joint, with dried blood crusted over.
Go away. You are only a hallucination.
But the vision of the mutilated colt did not dissipate. Instead, the manifestation of Snips multiplied into visions of more mutilated ponies. All were victims of Flutterbat, Lyra Heartstrings, Final Scratch, Octavia, Dr. Hooves, and Sakura. But what made her hold her breath until she almost passed out was the image of Applejack. She was the worst. Her legs had been horribly ripped apart, with the chilling white bone visible through the picked muscle and meat. Her neck was barely supported by her vertebrae, while her jaw was broken.
You know what you have to do, murderer.
She croaked out, her jaw swinging wildly. Twilight felt her eyes being forced open by an unseen force.
I know now what I have to do.
Twilight easily dispelled the magic restraint and teleported in. Flutterbat looked at her in surprise, probably wondering why she was offering herself as such an easy meal. A small part of Twilight screamed to stop this madness, but it was only a faint voice. Twilight looked at Flutterbat, quickly being knocked down by her, and watched as she opened her mouth. Her bloody fangs glistened in the faint light of the room. As she closed her eyes, not willing to fight against Flutterbat's massive force anymore.
I'm sorry I kept hush, Fluttershy.
Twilight had no voice after words for the screams that she wished to scream. All she remembered before feeling the impact of Flutterbat's massive fangs was the last words that Fluttershy had ever said to her. Words that she wished she would have thought more about. Maybe then, just maybe, this would have never happened.
Well then, if you're not willing to go to see Celestia first and secure me, then I see no point in continuing the tests. Please, Twilight.
Alright, if you think you really are well enough to discontinue tests, then I'll respect your decision, Fluttershy.
Thank you, Twilight. I'm glad you understand.
What are we friends for?
Everything.
Twilight wished that she would have realized that before the attacks started, and Ponyville became a hunting ground. The warmth of her own blood leaching down her neck, and the feeling of her life force being sucked from her was all that she felt before everything fell to black. And she had begun to descend into what seemed like an endless abyss.